The phone rang at exactly 2:47 p.m. on a Tuesday that started like any other. I was folding laundry in my bedroom when Mrs. Patterson's voice came through the speaker, shaky and clearly uncomfortable. "Mrs. Johnson, I need you to come to school immediately. There's been a situation with Melody's iPad." My heart dropped. Had my 7-year-old daughter broken her device? What kind of situation? I'd rather discuss this in person. It's quite serious. 20 minutes later, I sat in Mrs. Patterson's classroom, watching my daughter play quietly in the corner while her teacher struggled to find words. The children were working on their art projects when Melody opened what she thought was her drawing app. Mrs. Patterson's face was red with embarrassment. Instead, we saw inappropriate images and messages. Very inappropriate. She handed me the iPad and my blood went cold. This wasn't Melody's pink case. This was Derek's work iPad, identical to our daughter's except for the black case that looked exactly like hers in the morning rush. My hands trembled as I looked at the screen. There were photos that made my stomach turn. Not of strangers but of my husband. With another woman. The messages were even worse. "Baby, I can't wait to feel you again tonight. Your wife has no idea how good you make me feel. Room 237 at the Marriott. I'll be waiting." I felt like I was drowning. 8 years of marriage and this is what it had come to. My daughter had accidentally exposed my husband's affair to her entire second-grade class. "I'm so sorry you had to see this," Mrs. Patterson whispered. I immediately turned off the device but Melody saw some of it. She asked me why Daddy was hugging another lady like he hugs you. The world spun around me. How do you explain to a 7-year-old that her father is a cheater? How do you process that your entire life has been a lie? I managed to thank Mrs. Patterson and collect Melody, who chattered innocently about her day while I drove home in a daze. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. Derek was in the kitchen when we arrived, making himself a sandwich like nothing had happened. "Hey babe, how was your day?" He smiled, that same smile that used to make my heart flutter. Now it made me sick. "Fine," I managed, watching him search through his briefcase. "Have you seen my work iPad? I could have sworn I left it right here." I looked at our daughter, who was pulling off her backpack. "Melody, honey, go wash your hands for snack time." Once she was upstairs, I pulled the iPad from my purse. Derek's face went white as a sheet. "Zara, I can explain." "Don't." The word came out sharper than I intended. "Just don't." He reached for the device but I pulled it back. "How long?" "It's not what you think." "How long, Derek?" His shoulders slumped. 18 months. 18 months. A year and a half of lies. Of him coming home and kissing me hello after being with her. Of family dinners and bedtime stories and weekend trips, all while he was living a double life. Who is she? It doesn't matter. It matters to me. Natalie from accounting. I knew Natalie. Pretty, single, 28 to my 32. I'd met her at the company Christmas party just 4 months ago. She'd shaken my hand and complimented my dress while knowing she was sleeping with my husband. "I want you to leave," I said quietly. "Zara, please, we can work through this. Think about Melody." "I'm thinking about Melody. That's exactly why I want you out of this house." Derek tried to argue, tried to explain, tried to minimize what I'd seen. But the images were burned into my brain. The messages were clear as day. There was no explaining away 18 months of cheating. That night, after Derek reluctantly went to stay at his brother's place, I sat in my empty bedroom and cried. Not just for my marriage but for the fool I'd been. All those late nights at the office. All those business trips. All those times he came home and jumped straight in the shower. I'd trusted him completely, and he'd destroyed that trust without a second thought. But as I wiped my tears, something inside me hardened. This wasn't going to break me. Derek thought he could have his cake and eat it too, but he was wrong. Very wrong. I wasn't going to beg him to come back. I wasn't going to fight for a man who clearly didn't want to be fought for. Instead, I was going to make sure he understood exactly what he'd lost. And what it was going to cost him. I barely slept that first night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those images. Every time I drifted off, I heard Melody asking why Daddy was hugging another lady. By morning, I'd made a decision. I wasn't going to confront Derek again until I knew exactly what I was dealing with. If he'd been cheating for 18 months, there had to be more evidence. After dropping Melody at school, with her actual iPad this time, I called in sick to work. I needed time to think, to plan, to figure out my next move. Derek had texted 17 times overnight. Apologies, explanations, promises to change. I deleted them all without reading past the first few words. I started in his home office. Derek was organized to a fault, which worked in my favor. His filing system was meticulous, his computer password was still our anniversary date, and he'd never been careful about hiding things because he'd never had to be. What I found made my stomach turn. Credit card statements showed hotel charges I'd never heard about. Restaurant bills for two when he claimed to be working late. Jewelry purchases I'd never received. His email was a goldmine. Months of messages between him and Natalie, planning their meetings, sharing intimate details, even discussing me. She's been clingy lately. I think she suspects something, Derek had written just 2 weeks ago. Maybe you should throw her off the scent. Take her somewhere nice, Natalie had replied. That somewhere nice had been our anniversary dinner. The romantic evening I thought was Derek trying to reconnect with me had actually been damage control suggested by his mistress. I printed everything. Email chains, credit card statements, hotel receipts I found in his jacket pockets. I organized it all in a folder that grew thicker by the hour. But it wasn't just the affair that shocked me. It was how calculated it had been. How they'd laughed about my ignorance. How they'd used my trust against me. One email chain made me so angry I had to step away from the computer. Does she suspect anything? Natalie had asked. No, she's too trusting. Zara believes everything I tell her. Sometimes I think it would be easier if she was smarter. Too trusting. Too stupid. That's what my husband thought of me. Well, Derek was about to learn just how wrong he was. I called my sister Tina, the only person I could trust with this information. He what? She shouted when I told her. I'm coming over right now. Don't. I need to handle this carefully. Carefully? Zara, he's been cheating on you for over a year. Carefully went out the window when he decided to betray his family. I know you're angry, but I need you to listen to me. I'm not going to let emotions mess this up. I'm going to be smart about this. There was silence on the other end. Then, what do you need me to do? That afternoon, while Melody was at her friend's house, Tina came over to help me go through everything. She was a paralegal and she knew what would be important in divorce proceedings. This is really bad, Zara, she said, reading through the emails. But it's also really good for you. No judge is going to side with him after seeing this. We organized everything chronologically. The affair had started small, coffee meetings, lunch dates, innocent text messages. But it escalated quickly. Within 3 months they were meeting at hotels. Within 6 months they were talking about me like I was an obstacle to overcome. Look at this, Tina said, pointing to an email from 8 months ago. They talked about him leaving you. I read over her shoulder. Derek had written, I love what we have, but I can't leave right now. Zara would take everything, including Melody. I need to be strategic about this. Strategic, I repeated. He was planning to leave me anyway. He was just waiting for the right time. Then we make sure he doesn't get the chance to control the narrative, Tina said. You're going to leave him first and you're going to do it right. That evening, when Derek came to pick up some clothes, I was ready for him. We need to talk, he said. No, we don't. You need to listen. I handed him a printed copy of one email chain, just one, to let him know what I had. His face went white as he read it. Zara, you don't understand? I understand perfectly. You've been planning to leave me for months. You just wanted to do it on your terms. That's not. It's exactly true. But here's what you didn't plan for, Derek. I'm leaving you first. I could see the panic in his eyes. He'd underestimated me, just like he'd written in those emails. He thought I was too trusting, too naive, too stupid to figure out what he was doing. He was wrong on all counts. What do you want? He asked quietly. I want you to understand that this marriage is over. Not because of one mistake, but because of 18 months of lies. Because of the way you and she talked about me. Because you were planning to leave me anyway. Derek tried to argue, tried to explain, tried to negotiate. But I was done listening. I'd heard everything I needed to hear in those emails. That night, after he left, I sat at my kitchen table and made a list. Everything I needed to do to protect myself and Melody. Everything I needed to do to make sure Derek understood he'd lost the best thing he'd ever had. I wasn't going to destroy myself trying to save a marriage he'd already killed. Instead, I was going to save myself. And I was going to make sure he regretted every single lie he'd told. The hardest part wasn't the anger or the hurt. It was pretending everything was normal when Derek decided he wanted to work things out. I think we should go to counseling, he announced over dinner at a restaurant I later discovered he'd taken Natalie to 3 times. I smiled and nodded while inside I screamed. That sounds like a good idea. Derek thought he was managing the situation. He'd agreed to end things with Natalie, or so he claimed. He'd deleted her number from his phone in front of me. He'd even suggested we take a weekend trip to reconnect. What he didn't know was that I'd already spoken to a lawyer. What he didn't realize was that his work computer was still logged into his personal email on our home network, and I could see every message he sent, including the ones to Natalie. She wants to go to counseling, he'd written the day after our restaurant conversation. I have to play along for now, but nothing changes between us. How long do we have to wait? Natalie had replied. A few months. Long enough to make it look like we tried. A few months. He was giving himself a few months to fool me into thinking he was committed to our marriage while he continued his affair in secret. The audacity was breathtaking. But I played my part perfectly. I scheduled the counseling appointments. I bought new lingerie, with his credit card of course. I even suggested we renew our wedding vows for our upcoming anniversary. Really? Derek looked surprised. You'd want to do that? I think it would be beautiful. A new start for us. He actually smiled, thinking he was successfully manipulating me. The man who'd been calling me too trusting and naive in emails to his mistress had no idea I was 10 steps ahead of him. During this time I was busy. I opened my own bank account and slowly transferred money from our joint savings. I researched divorce lawyers and chose the best one in the city. I made copies of every important document we owned and stored them in a safety deposit box Derek didn't know about. Most importantly, I documented everything. Every lie Derek told me, I had the email that contradicted it. Every promise he made, I had evidence he was breaking it with Natalie. The breaking point came 3 weeks into this charade. Derek announced that his company was having a charity gala, and spouses were invited. It'll be good for us to be seen together, he said. Show everyone we're solid. What Derek didn't mention, but I knew from his emails, was that Natalie would be there too. He was planning to bring me to the same event as his mistress, probably getting some twisted thrill from the situation. I'd love to go, I told him. Should I buy a new dress? Get whatever you want, baby. You deserve it. Baby. The same pet name he used with Natalie in his messages. I bought a stunning red dress that cost more than our mortgage payment. If I was going to confront my husband's affair publicly, I was going to look amazing doing it. The night of the gala, I spent extra time on my hair and makeup. Derek kept complimenting me, telling me how beautiful I looked, how lucky he was to have me. Each compliment felt like a slap in the face. At the gala, I watched Derek work the room, playing the part of the devoted husband while his eyes searched for Natalie. When he finally found her, I saw the look they exchanged. A quick smile, a subtle nod. They thought they were being discreet. They weren't. Honey, I want you to meet some people from accounting, Derek said, guiding me toward a group that included Natalie. The woman who'd been sleeping with my husband for 18 months stood 3 feet away from me, shaking my hand and telling me how lovely I looked. Derek talks about you all the time, she said with a straight face. All good things, I hope, I replied, matching her fake smile. Oh, absolutely. He adores you and Melody. The lies rolled off her tongue so easily. This woman had been reading Derek's messages about how clingy I was, how he wished I was smarter, how he was planning to leave me. And here she stood, pretending to be my friend. But I played along. I complimented her dress. I asked about her family. I even suggested we should all have dinner sometime. That would be wonderful, Natalie said. I'd love to get to know you better. Derek looked uncomfortable, but what could he say? He'd created this situation by thinking he could have both of us in the same room. That night, driving home, Derek was quiet. Everything okay? I asked innocently. Fine. Just tired. Natalie seems nice. He stiffened. Yeah, she's a good employee. Employee. I let the word hang in the air. She seemed very friendly. What do you mean? Nothing really. Just that she seemed to know a lot about our family. About Melody's school, about our anniversary coming up. Most coworkers don't know those kinds of details. Derek's hands tightened on the steering wheel. We work closely together. Sometimes personal stuff comes up in conversation. Of course, I agreed. That makes perfect sense. But we both knew it didn't. And Derek was starting to realize that maybe I wasn't as naive as he thought. That night, I lay awake next to my cheating husband, planning my next move. The facade was getting harder to maintain, but I needed just a few more weeks to finalize everything. Just a few more weeks, and Derek would learn what it felt like to lose everything he thought he was so cleverly managing. Just a few more weeks, and the woman he thought was too trusting would show him exactly how wrong he'd been. The Monday after the gala, I called Jennifer Rodriguez, the divorce attorney I'd researched. Her office was in downtown Chicago, far enough from Derek's workplace that there was no chance of accidentally running into anyone who knew him. I need to discuss a divorce, I told her secretary, but discretion is very important. 2 hours later, I sat in Jennifer's office, explaining my situation while she took notes. "You've documented everything well," she said, reviewing the folder I'd brought. "This level of evidence makes things much cleaner." "How clean?" "With adultery this well documented, and considering you have a minor child, you're in an excellent position. Illinois allows for fault-based divorce, and judges don't look kindly on affairs that put children at risk of exposure to inappropriate content." "What about custody?" "Given that your daughter accidentally discovered the affair at school, and that your husband showed clear disregard for her well-being by storing explicit content on an unsecured device, I'd say you have strong grounds for primary custody." Relief flooded through me. My biggest fear had been losing Melody in a custody battle. "What about finances?" Jennifer smiled grimly. "Your husband spent marital assets on his affair. Hotels, restaurants, gifts for his mistress. That's dissipation of marital property. The court will not be amused." "How long will this take?" "If he doesn't contest it, about 4 to 6 months. If he fights it," she shrugged, "could be longer. But with evidence this strong, most people don't fight." I left Jennifer's office feeling more confident than I had in weeks. But I still had work to do. My next stop was the bank. I'd been slowly moving money to my private account, but I needed to accelerate the process. I also needed to understand exactly what assets we had and where they were located. "I'd like to discuss our accounts," I told our financial advisor, Tom Chin. "Derek and I had been clients for 5 years. "Of course. Is Derek joining us?" "He's traveling for work," I lied smoothly. I wanted to get a complete picture of our financial situation. You know how men are, they handle the investments and assume we don't need to know the details. Tom laughed and nodded, completely buying my act. For the next hour he walked me through every account, every investment, every asset Derek and I owned together. It was more than I'd realized. The house, our retirement accounts, Derek's 401k investment properties, even collectibles Derek had been buying. Together we were worth almost $2 million. "You've done very well," Tom said proudly. "Derek's been smart about diversifying." Derek had been smart about a lot of things. Too bad he hadn't been smart enough to keep his affair secret. After the bank, I drove to my sister's house to pick up Melody. I'd been leaving her there more often lately, claiming I needed to run errands. Tina never asked questions, but I could see the concern in her eyes. "How are you holding up?" she asked while Melody played with her cousins. "Better than I expected. I have a lawyer, I understand our finances, and I have enough evidence to bury him." "And emotionally?" I paused. "I'm angry. But it's cold anger now, not hot anger. I'm focused." "Good. That's what you need to be." That evening, Derek came home early, surprising me in the kitchen. "I thought we could have dinner together," he said, holding a bouquet of flowers, roses, the same kind he'd sent Natalie according to his credit card statements. "That's sweet," I said, taking the flowers and putting them in water. Over dinner, Derek tried to be the perfect husband. He asked about my day, complimented the meal, even helped Melody with her homework. It was the most attention he'd paid to our family in months. "You seem different lately," he said after Melody went to bed. "Different how?" "Calmer. Happier. I think the counseling is really helping." If only he knew that I'd been canceling our counseling sessions and using that time to meet with my lawyer instead. "I feel like we're finding our way back to each other," I agreed. Derek smiled and reached for my hand. "I love you, Zara. I know I haven't been perfect, but I want you to know how much you mean to me." The lies came so easily to him. Even now, even after everything I'd discovered, he could look me in the eye and lie without flinching. "I love you too," I replied, and for the first time, it felt strange to say words that had once been true. Later that night, I checked Derek's email one more time. Sure enough, there was a message to Natalie from that afternoon. "Had to come home early and play husband. She's buying the counseling story completely. Just a few more weeks and we can make our move." Our move. They were still planning their future together, still thinking they were manipulating me. I printed the email and added it to my ever-growing file. Tomorrow, I would open a new savings account and transfer more money. This weekend, I would look at apartments under the guise of shopping for a friend. Derek thought he was controlling the timeline, but he was wrong. I was going to control when this marriage ended, and I was going to control how it ended. He'd spent 18 months lying to me, using me, planning to leave me when it was convenient for him. Now it was my turn to make plans. And unlike Derek's plans, mine were going to work exactly the way I wanted them to. Finding an apartment while pretending to house hunt for my fictional friend was easier than I'd expected. The real estate agent, Patricia, Was eager to help and didn't ask too many questions when I toured places by myself. Your friend has excellent taste, she said as we walked through a beautiful 2-bedroom apartment in Lincoln Park. The school district is fantastic, and the building has great security. I nodded, mentally calculating whether I could afford the rent on my salary alone. After years of relying on Derek's income to maintain our lifestyle, the math was sobering. But I'd rather live modestly as a single mother than luxuriously as a fool. I think she'll love it, I told Patricia. Can you hold it for a few days while she thinks it over? Back home, I found Derek in his office, video chatting with someone he claimed was a client. I knocked on the door and waved, smiling brightly. He waved back and mouthed, 5 minutes. As I walked away, I heard him say, sorry about that, baby. Where were we? Baby. Not a client then. Natalie, no doubt, enjoying their lunch hour video call. The casual nature of his lies had stopped surprising me. What surprised me now was how clearly I could see through them. For months, maybe years, I'd accepted his explanations without question. Now I questioned everything. That afternoon, while Derek was genuinely at work, I sat Melody down for a careful conversation. Sweetheart, how would you feel about moving to a new apartment? Just you and Mommy? Melody looked up from her coloring book. What about Daddy? Daddy would visit you lots, but he wouldn't live with us anymore. Like Jamie's mom and dad? Melody's classmate Jamie lived with his mother and saw his father on weekends. I'd always felt sorry for that family. Now I envied the clarity of their arrangement. Similar to that, yes. Would I have my own room? You would have your own beautiful room. Melody considered this seriously. Can I paint it purple? Any color you want, baby. Okay, she said, returning to her coloring. Can we get a cat? I laughed despite everything. We'll see. That evening I made 2 important phone calls. The first was to my boss, explaining that I was going through a divorce and might need some flexibility in my schedule. Linda was understanding and assured me that my job was secure. The second call was to my mother. I'm leaving Derek, I said without preamble. There was silence on the other end of the line. Then, it's about time. What do you mean? Zara, honey, I've been worried about your marriage for 2 years. Derek became distant, you became anxious. I didn't know what was wrong, but I knew something was wrong. Why didn't you say anything? Because you weren't ready to hear it. Are you ready now? I thought about the question. Was I ready? Ready to be a single mother? Ready to start over at 32? Ready to explain to Melody why Daddy didn't live with us anymore? Yes, I said. I'm ready. Good. What do you need? Help with Melody during the transition. And maybe someone to talk to who won't judge me for staying as long as I did. You stayed because you loved him and trusted him. That's not something to be ashamed of. Something to be proud of. It means you have integrity even if he doesn't. After I hung up, I felt lighter than I had in months. I wasn't alone in this. I had family support, financial resources, and legal representation. Most importantly, I had a plan. Over the next 2 weeks, I executed that plan systematically. I signed the lease on the apartment and arranged for utilities to be connected. I hired movers for a Saturday when Derek would be traveling, or at least when he claimed he would be traveling. I also made a difficult decision about work. I'd been at the marketing firm for 4 years, but it was Derek's connection that got me the job. Too many mutual professional contacts, too much potential for awkwardness. So I applied for positions at other firms, using my experience and portfolio to secure interviews. The week before my planned departure, I got an offer from a smaller but well-respected company. Better pay, better benefits, and no connection to Derek's world. I need to start in 3 weeks, I told the hiring manager. That's unusually fast, she said. Most people give more notice. I'm in the middle of a divorce, I explained. I need a fresh start professionally as well as personally. I understand completely. 3 weeks it is. Everything was falling into place. I had a new job, a new apartment, and a legal team ready to file papers the moment I gave them the green light. But there was one more thing I needed to do first. That Friday evening, Derek announced he had to travel to Detroit for a client meeting. I'll probably be gone all weekend, he said, kissing my forehead. Sorry, baby. No problem, I replied. Melody and I will have a girls' weekend. After Derek left, I checked his location on the Find My Phone app we'd set up years ago for safety. He was indeed heading toward the airport. But according to his email, which I was still monitoring, he wasn't going to Detroit. He was going to Nashville with Natalie for a romantic weekend getaway. They'd booked a suite at the Hermitage Hotel. They'd made dinner reservations at the most expensive restaurant in the city. They'd even bought tickets to a concert. All on our credit cards, of course. While my cheating husband was spending our money on his mistress, I was home packing boxes and preparing to disappear from his life forever. By Sunday night, when Derek returned from his fake business trip, I would be gone. And unlike him, I wouldn't be lying about where I was going or what I was doing. I was starting over, and I was doing it with my integrity intact. Something Derek would never be able to say. While Derek was in Nashville with Natalie, I made the call I'd been planning for weeks. It took me 3 tries to dial the number, not because I was unsure, but because I wanted to make sure I said exactly the right thing. Human Resources, this is Michelle. Hi, I need to report a situation involving employee conduct. I'd prefer to remain anonymous if possible. What type of conduct are we discussing? A romantic relationship between Derek Johnson in sales and Natalie Walsh in accounting. They've been using company resources for personal meetings, and there may be policy violations regarding workplace relationships. Michelle's tone became more formal. Can you provide specific details? I gave her enough information to trigger an investigation without revealing how I'd obtained it. Meeting times that conflicted with reported schedules. Hotel charges on company credit cards during supposed business trips. Email patterns that suggested non-work communication during business hours. Thank you for bringing this to our attention, Michelle said. We'll look into it immediately. I hung up feeling a mix of satisfaction and guilt. Part of me felt bad for potentially damaging Derek's career. But then I remembered him calling me too trusting in emails to his mistress, and the guilt disappeared. Besides, I wasn't destroying his career. I was simply reporting behavior that violated company policy. What happened next was Derek's responsibility, not mine. The rest of the weekend passed in a blur of packing and organizing. Tina came over to help, bringing pizza and wine for fortification. Are you sure you want to leave before talking to him? She asked as we wrapped dishes in newspaper. What's left to say? He's had 18 months to talk to me. Instead, he chose to lie. Some people would want closure. This is my closure. I'm taking control of my life instead of waiting for him to decide my fate. By Sunday afternoon, the apartment was mostly packed. I'd left Derek's things untouched but removed every trace of Melody and myself. Photos, personal items, important documents. Everything was either packed or stored in my safety deposit box. I left a letter on Derek's pillow. It was short and to the point. Derek, I know about Natalie. I know about all of it. Don't try to contact me. My lawyer will be in touch. The house key is on the kitchen counter. Zara. Then Melody and I drove to our new apartment, where I spent the evening unpacking boxes and trying to create a sense of home in our new space. Derek's first call came at 6:17 p.m. on Sunday. I didn't answer. Neither did I answer the second, third, or fourth calls. By Monday morning, he'd left 11 voicemails and sent 23 texts. I didn't read or listen to any of them. Instead, I called Jennifer Rodriguez. It's time, I told her. File the papers. Are you sure you're ready? I've never been more sure of anything in my life. While Jennifer handled the legal paperwork, I started my new job. The office was smaller than my previous one, but the energy was better. People seemed genuinely happy to be there, and my new boss, Rachel, was supportive from day one. Take whatever time you need to get settled, she said during my first week. We know transitions can be challenging. Meanwhile, Derek's world was beginning to crumble. Tina kept me updated through mutual friends who worked at his company. The HR investigation had moved quickly. Derek and Natalie were called in for separate meetings on Tuesday. By Wednesday, security footage from the office building was being reviewed. By Thursday, their company credit card expenses were being audited. Apparently they found hotel charges that didn't match any business travel, Tina reported. And email logs showing personal correspondence during work hours. What happens now? Internal review board meets next week. Best case scenario for them is a written warning and mandatory separation. One of them transfers departments. Worst case is termination for both. I felt a grim satisfaction hearing this. Derek had been so careful about hiding his affair from me, but apparently not careful enough to avoid leaving a paper trail at work. Friday afternoon, Derek showed up at my new office. I was coming back from lunch when I saw him in the lobby, talking to the receptionist. There's a man here to see you, she said when I approached. Says he's your husband? Ex-husband, I corrected loudly enough for Derek to hear. And I don't have time to talk. Zara, please, Derek said, following me toward the elevator. 5 minutes. No. I got the divorce papers. We need to discuss this. I turned to face him, acutely aware that my new co-workers were watching. There's nothing to discuss. Sign them. What about counseling? What about working through this? You had 18 months to work through this. You chose to work through it with Natalie instead. Derek's face went red. Can we please not do this here? You came to my workplace. You chose the location. I just want to understand why you won't even try to save our marriage. The audacity was breathtaking. He wanted to understand why I wouldn't save a marriage he'd been actively destroying for over a year. Because you killed it, I said simply. You killed it with every lie, every hotel room, every time you came home and kissed me after being with her. It was a mistake. It was 18 months of mistakes. And you only call it a mistake because you got caught. Derek tried to argue, but I walked away. I had work to do, a new life to build, and no more time to waste on a man who'd already wasted enough of my time. That evening, Melody asked about the apartment. I like the purple room, she said. But when is Daddy coming to see it? Soon, baby. He's been very busy with work. It wasn't entirely a lie. Derek was indeed busy with work, trying to save his job after the HR investigation. According to my sources, things weren't going well. The company had a strict policy about relationships between employees, especially when they involved different departments and potential conflicts of interest. Derek and Natalie had violated that policy for over a year. More damaging was the misuse of company resources. Hotel rooms charged to the company for non-business purposes. Personal meals on company credit cards. Personal emails sent during work hours using company equipment. They're lucky if they just get fired, Tina reported. There could be criminal charges for fraud. Criminal charges seemed extreme, but I didn't feel bad about Derek's predicament. He'd made his choices. Now he had to live with the consequences. What I did feel bad about was Melody. She didn't understand why Daddy wasn't living with us anymore, why he couldn't come to our new apartment, why Mommy seemed sad sometimes. Is Daddy sick? She asked one evening. No, baby. Daddy and Mommy just can't live together anymore. Because you're mad at him? I chose my words carefully. Because sometimes grown-ups make mistakes that can't be fixed. Like when I broke your favorite mug? Bigger mistakes than that, sweetheart. Melody seemed to accept this explanation, at least for now. I knew there would be harder questions later, but for now it was enough. As I tucked her into her purple bedroom that night, I reflected on how much had changed in just 2 weeks. I had a new job, a new home, and a new life. Derek's career was in jeopardy, his affair was exposed, and his comfortable life was falling apart. For the first time since discovering his betrayal, I felt genuinely hopeful about the future. Not because of Derek's problems, but because of my own possibilities. I was free. And that felt better than any revenge. The call came on a Wednesday morning while I was reviewing marketing campaigns at my new job. Derek's number flashed on my phone screen. I'd been ignoring his calls for 3 weeks, but something made me answer this one. Zara, please don't hang up, he said immediately. I lost my job. I felt a moment of surprise, even though I'd known this was likely. I'm sorry to hear that. Sorry? His voice cracked. That's all you have to say? What did you expect me to say? I expected my wife to care that I'm unemployed, that I can't pay the mortgage, that my entire life is falling apart. I'm not your wife anymore, Derek. The papers were finalized yesterday. There was silence on the other end. Then, yesterday? You signed them 3 weeks ago. Did you think they weren't real? I hoped you'd change your mind. I haven't changed my mind about anything. Derek's breathing was heavy. They fired both of us. Natalie too. For misconduct and misuse of company resources. I see. Do you know what this means? I can't get another job in sales in this city. Everyone will know why I was fired. I felt a flicker of something, not quite satisfaction but a sense of justice. Actions have consequences, Derek. You did this. You reported us. I reported a policy violation. What you did with that information was your choice. My choice. Derek's voice rose. My choice was to make one mistake and pay for it for the rest of my life? Your choice was to make the same mistake every day for 18 months. Your choice was to lie to me every day for 18 months. Your choice was to use our credit cards to pay for hotel rooms where you slept with another woman. I never meant for it to go so far. But it did go that far. And now you're dealing with the consequences. Derek was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was different. Smaller. What about Melody? She needs her father. She has her father. You can see her on weekends, just like we agreed in the custody arrangement. But the house will be sold, just like we agreed. Where am I supposed to live? I almost laughed. After everything he'd put me through, Derek was asking me to solve his housing problem. That's not my concern anymore, I said. You're a grown man. Figure it out. Zara, please. I know I made mistakes, but we were married for 8 years. That has to count for something. It did count for something. It counted enough for me to give you 8 years of loyalty, trust, and love. You decided that wasn't worth anything. I'm begging you. Don't beg, don't plead, don't make promises you won't keep. We're done, Derek. Completely done. I hung up before he could respond. That afternoon, Tina called with more details about Derek's termination. It was brutal, she said. Security escorted him out. Natalie too. Apparently, the investigation found thousands of dollars in fraudulent charges. They're considering pressing charges. Criminal charges? Theft, fraud, misuse of company property. The legal department is reviewing everything. I felt a moment of genuine surprise. I'd wanted Derek to face consequences for his actions, but criminal charges seemed severe. Do you feel bad? Tina asked. I considered the question honestly. No. I feel resolved. Resolved? For 18 months, Derek made me feel like I was crazy for questioning things that didn't make sense. He made me doubt my instincts, doubt my intelligence, doubt my worth. Now everyone can see what I saw, that he's a liar who makes selfish decisions and expects other people to deal with the fallout. That evening, I picked up Melody from after-school care and took her to dinner at her favorite restaurant. She chattered about her day, her friends, her plans for the weekend. She seemed happy and adjusted, which was more than I dared hope for. Mommy, can I ask you something? Of course, baby. Why doesn't Daddy call anymore? My heart clenched. Derek had been so focused on his own problems that he'd barely spoken to his daughter in weeks. Daddy is going through some changes right now. But he loves you very much. Is he sad? I chose my words carefully. Yes, he's sad. But sometimes being sad helps people learn to make better choices. Will he make better choices? I hope so, sweetheart. That night, after Melody went to bed, I sat in my new living room and reflected on how different my life looked than it had 2 months ago. I was divorced, starting over financially, raising my daughter alone. But I wasn't bitter. I wasn't angry anymore either. I was just free. Derek had spent so much energy trying to have everything: a wife, a mistress, a respectable reputation, financial security. In the end, his greed had cost him everything. I'd spent my energy more wisely. I'd planned carefully, acted decisively, and protected what mattered most, my daughter and my future. As I got ready for bed, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. This is Natalie. We need to talk. I stared at the message for a long moment, then deleted it without responding. Whatever Natalie wanted to say, I didn't need to hear it. Derek was her problem now, not mine. And frankly, they deserved each other. 3 months after the divorce was finalized, I was settling into a routine that actually brought me joy. Mornings with Melody over pancakes and cartoons. Days at a job where I felt valued and respected. Evenings in our cozy apartment, reading stories and planning weekend adventures. The contrast to my old life was remarkable. No more waiting for Derek to come home late from work. No more making excuses for his absence at school events. No more walking on eggshells, wondering if I'd said something wrong when he seemed distant. You look different, my mom said during one of her visits. She was helping Melody build a blanket fort in the living room. Different how? Lighter. More yourself, if that makes sense. It did make sense. For months, maybe years, I'd been trying to hold together a marriage that was already broken. The constant tension, the nagging sense that something was wrong, the effort of pretending everything was fine, it had been exhausting in ways I hadn't fully realized. Now, even with the challenges of single motherhood and starting over financially, I felt more energetic than I had in ages. Work was going particularly well. My new company appreciated my ideas and gave me freedom to implement them. Within 6 weeks, I'd landed 2 major clients and earned praise from the senior partners. You have excellent instincts, Rachel told me during my first quarterly review. You see problems before they become crises and solve them efficiently. If only she knew how much practice I'd had identifying problems and solving them quietly. The financial adjustment had been easier than expected too. The divorce settlement was fair. I kept my retirement accounts and half the proceeds from selling the house. Derek kept his accounts and the other half. Without Derek's expensive tastes and secret affair expenses, my money went much further. You're doing amazingly well, Jennifer Rodriguez said when I met with her to finalize some remaining paperwork. Some people struggle for years after a divorce like yours. You seem to have landed on your feet. I had good legal advice, I said. and I planned ahead. You did more than plan ahead. You protected yourself and your daughter while maintaining your integrity. That's not easy when you're dealing with betrayal. The comment stuck with me. Maintaining my integrity had been important even when I was furious and hurt. I could have destroyed Derek's career more thoroughly, shared the details of his affair with mutual friends, or tried to turn Melody against him. Instead, I'd focused on building my own new life. Speaking of Melody, she was thriving too. The divorce had been hard for her initially, but children are more resilient than we give them credit for. She loved her purple bedroom, enjoyed the independence of our smaller household, and had even made friends with the little girl next door. Derek saw her every other weekend as agreed in the custody arrangement. Their relationship was strained. Derek was still dealing with unemployment and had moved into a studio apartment across town, but he was trying to be a good father within his limitations. Daddy seems sad, Melody reported after one visit. He keeps asking if I like our new house. What do you tell him? That I like having my own room and that you make better pancakes. I tried not to smile at that. The one conversation I'd been dreading finally happened on a Sunday evening in November. Derek brought Melody home from their weekend together and asked if we could talk. 5 minutes, I agreed. We sat in my car while Melody ran upstairs to our apartment. I've been thinking about everything, Derek said. About what I lost, what I threw away. I didn't respond. I miss you. Not just the marriage but you. Your laugh, your cooking, the way you organized everything. I miss coming home to you. Derek. I know I have no right to ask, but is there any chance, any possibility at all, that we could try again? I looked at this man I'd been married to for 8 years, father of my child, person I'd once planned to grow old with. He looked tired, older, defeated. No, I said gently. There's no chance. Because of what I did with Natalie? Because of who you turned out to be. The cheating was just how I found out. Derek's face crumpled. I'm not that person anymore. Losing everything changed me. Maybe it did. But it's too late for us. Please, Zara. I'll do anything. The best thing you can do is be a good father to Melody and leave me alone. Derek sat in silence for a moment. Then he nodded and got out of the car. I watched him walk to his own car, shoulders slumped, and felt something I hadn't expected to feel, pity. Not enough to change my mind, but enough to remind me that I'd loved him once, before he'd become someone I couldn't trust. That night, after Melody went to bed, I sat on my couch with a cup of tea and reflected on the conversation. 6 months ago, Derek begging me to take him back would have been my greatest hope. Now it was just sad. I'd built a new life and it was a good life. Better in many ways than the life I'd shared with Derek. I had work I enjoyed, friends who valued me, and a daughter who felt secure and loved. More importantly, I had myself back. The woman who'd trusted her instincts, made hard decisions, and refused to settle for less than she deserved. Derek could spend his energy wishing for the past. I was investing mine in the future. And my future looked very bright indeed. The text message arrived on a cold Tuesday morning in December, almost 7 months after I'd moved out. Derek's been arrested. I stared at Tina's message, coffee growing cold in my hands. I'd known criminal charges were possible, but seeing those words made my stomach drop. I called her immediately. What happened? Fraud charges. The company pressed them last week and apparently Derek couldn't make bail. He's been in jail since Friday. Jail? Despite everything Derek had done, the thought of Melody's father behind bars was shocking. The amount was bigger than anyone realized. Almost $30,000 in fraudulent charges over 2 years. Hotels, restaurants, even jewelry, all charged to company accounts and claimed as business expenses. $30,000. No wonder the company had pressed charges. What about Natalie? She cooperated with the investigation and testified against Derek. Apparently, she claimed he pressured her into the relationship and manipulated her into going along with the fraud. I felt a bitter laugh escape. Of course she did. The prosecutor offered her immunity in exchange for her testimony. Derek's lawyer is pushing for a plea deal, but it's not looking good. After I hung up, I sat in my kitchen trying to process this information. Part of me felt vindicated. Derek's lies and manipulation had finally caught up with him. But part of me felt genuinely sad. Whatever else Derek had been, he was still Melody's father. The bigger question was what to tell our daughter. She was supposed to spend this weekend with Derek, obviously impossible now. But how do you explain to a 7-year-old that Daddy is in jail? That evening, I sat Melody down for one of the hardest conversations of my life. Sweetheart, Daddy won't be able to see you this weekend. He has some grown-up problems he needs to fix. What kind of problems? I'd practiced this conversation in my head all day, but it was still difficult. Daddy made some mistakes at work, and now he has to talk to some important people about fixing them. Is he in trouble? Yes, he's in trouble. But it's not your fault, and it doesn't mean he doesn't love you. Melody absorbed this information with the seriousness of a child trying to understand adult complexity. How long will it take to fix? I don't know, baby. Maybe a long time. Will I see him for Christmas? My heart broke a little. I don't think so, sweetheart. That night, I called my lawyer to understand what Derek's legal troubles meant for our custody arrangement. If he's convicted, you'll likely get sole custody, Jennifer explained. The court won't order supervised visitation with a parent who's incarcerated. And if he gets out? Depends on the terms of his release and how long he serves. But realistically, his access to Melody will be significantly limited. After I hung up, I realized that Derek's choices had consequences I hadn't even considered. His affair hadn't just destroyed our marriage. It had potentially destroyed his relationship with his daughter. The next few weeks brought regular updates from Tina and other mutual friends. Derek's case was proceeding quickly. His lawyer had advised him to take a plea deal, 18 months in minimum security prison, 3 years probation, and full restitution to his former employer. He took the deal, Tina reported. Sentencing is next month. Meanwhile, Natalie had apparently moved back to her hometown in Ohio. Her testimony had been damaging. She'd painted Derek as the mastermind who convinced her to participate in the fraud. Whether that was true or strategic, it had worked. She walked away with community service while Derek faced prison time. Do you think she was a victim? Tina asked. I considered the question. I'd read Derek and Natalie's emails. I'd seen how they'd talked about me, how they'd planned their deception together. Natalie hadn't been an innocent bystander. I think she was smarter than Derek, I said finally. Smart enough to save herself when things went wrong. Christmas that year was different but not sad. I created new traditions with Melody, baking cookies, watching holiday movies, volunteering at a local shelter. My parents came to visit, and we had a quiet, peaceful celebration. This feels more like home than the house ever did, my mom observed. She was right. The apartment was smaller, simpler, but it felt like ours in a way the house never had. Every decoration, every piece of furniture, every family photo reflected the life Melody and I were building together. On New Year's Eve, while Melody slept and I reflected on the year that had changed everything, my phone rang. Unknown number. Hello. Zara, it's Derek. I almost hung up immediately. How are you calling me? I get one phone call a day. I've been saving them, hoping you'd answer. What do you want, Derek? I want to apologize. Really apologize, not the fake apologies I gave you before. I said nothing. I know I destroyed everything. I know I have no right to ask for forgiveness. But I need you to know that I understand now what I lost. Understanding doesn't change anything. I know. I wanted you to hear it from me. You deserved better than what I gave you. Melody deserves better than what I gave her. For the first time since this whole nightmare began, Derek sounded genuinely remorseful instead of just sorry for himself. Yes, we did deserve better, I agreed. Are you happy now? I considered the question honestly. Yes, I'm happy. Good. You should be happy. You're an incredible woman, and I was too selfish to appreciate what I had. After I hung up, I realized that Derek's call felt like closure in a way his previous attempts at reconciliation hadn't. He wasn't trying to get me back or minimize his actions. He was simply acknowledging the truth. It didn't change anything. I was still divorced, he was still going to prison, and our family was still broken. But it felt like the final chapter of our story together was finally written. Now I could focus completely on writing the next chapters of my life. And those chapters, I was determined, would be much happier than the ones that came before. 1 year later, I stood in my kitchen making Melody's favorite Saturday morning pancakes while she colored at the table, chattering about her upcoming 8th birthday party. Sunlight streamed through the windows of our apartment, and jazz music played softly in the background. Can we invite my whole class? Melody asked for the 3rd time. We can invite your whole class, I confirmed, flipping a pancake with practiced ease. This simple moment, weekend morning with my daughter, no anxiety about when Derek would come home or what mood he'd be in, no walking on eggshells, represented everything I'd gained in leaving my marriage. The past year had been full of growth and unexpected joys. My career was thriving. I'd been promoted to senior account manager and was being considered for the creative director position. Melody was excelling in school and had made close friends in our neighborhood. Most surprisingly, I'd rediscovered parts of myself I'd forgotten existed. Like my love of photography, which I'd abandoned during my marriage because Derek found it impractical. Now I took weekend photography classes and had even sold some prints at a local art fair. "Mom, someone's at the door," Melody announced. I glanced through the peephole and smiled. It was James, our neighbor from down the hall, holding a cup of coffee and a newspaper. "Morning delivery," he said when I opened the door. "Thought you might want to see this." James was a freelance journalist, divorced father of the little girl Melody played with. Over the past few months, we developed an easy friendship built on shared morning conversations while our daughters got ready for school. He handed me the business section of the Chicago Tribune. There, in a small article about corporate fraud cases, was a mention of Derek's sentencing. 18 months in minimum security prison as expected. "You okay?" James asked, studying my face. "I'm fine," I said and meant it. The article felt like news about a stranger, not someone who'd once been central to my life. "Good. You've built something amazing here." He gestured around our apartment, where Melody's artwork covered the refrigerator and books were stacked on every surface. "Don't let old news disturb your peace." After James left, I reflected on his words while Melody and I ate breakfast. I had built something amazing. A life based on honesty, independence, and genuine happiness rather than the illusion of perfection I'd maintained in my marriage. The phone rang, interrupting my thoughts. "Jennifer Rodriguez, my lawyer." "Good news," she said. "Derek's restitution payments have started coming through. Your portion should be in your account by Monday." Derek's court-ordered restitution meant I'd be receiving regular payments to compensate for the marital assets he'd spent on his affair. It wasn't a fortune, but it would help secure Melody's college fund. "There's something else," Jennifer continued. "Derek's lawyer contacted me about modifying the custody arrangement." My stomach tightened. "What kind of modification?" "He wants to sign over full custody to you. No visitation rights, no shared decision-making. He'll still pay child support, but he wants to completely remove himself from Melody's life legally." I was quiet, processing this information. "Why now?" I asked. "His lawyer says he believes it's best for Melody. Prison has given him time to think, apparently." After I hung up, I stood in my kitchen trying to decide how I felt about Derek's decision. Part of me was relieved. No more coordinating schedules, no more explaining to Melody why Daddy couldn't see her, no more dealing with Derek's attempts to remain in our lives. But part of me felt sad for Melody. Whatever Derek's faults as a husband, he was still her father. His decision to remove himself completely seemed like another form of abandonment. That afternoon, while Melody played at a friend's house, I called Derek's prison. "I got the message about custody," I said when he came to the phone. "I thought you'd be happy. I'm thinking about Melody. She's going to have questions." Derek was quiet for a long moment. "Tell her I love her, but I want her to have the best life possible. And the best life possible doesn't include a father who's in prison." "Derek. Zara. You've given her stability, security, happiness. Everything I couldn't give her. I won't disrupt that anymore. She might want to see you when she's older. Then she can make that choice when she's 18. But for now, I want you to have complete control over her life. No interference from me." After I hung up, I realized Derek had made the first truly selfless decision I'd seen from him. It was painful and difficult, but it was focused on Melody's well-being rather than his own needs. That evening, I had another difficult conversation with my daughter about her father's decision. "So Daddy won't visit anymore?" she asked. "No, sweetheart. He thinks it's better for you if he doesn't." "Because he's in trouble?" "Because he wants you to have the happiest, most stable life possible." Melody considered this seriously. "Will you be sad without Daddy?" "No, baby. I won't be sad." "Good. Because I like our life now." "You do. We have more fun now. And you smile more." Out of the mouths of babes. Even at 7 years old, Melody had noticed the change in me. 6 months later, I was preparing for a company retreat when James knocked on my door with his usual morning coffee and newspaper delivery. But this time he lingered. "There's something I wanted to ask you," he said, suddenly seeming nervous. "Ask away. Would you like to have dinner with me? A real dinner, not just coffee in the hallway. A date." I looked at this kind, funny, genuine man who'd become such a good friend. The idea of dating still felt foreign after everything I'd been through, but James felt safe in a way I hadn't expected to find again. "I'd like that," I said. "Really? Really?" That evening as I got ready for our date, I caught sight of myself in the mirror. I looked different than I had during my marriage. More confident, more relaxed, more authentically myself. 2 years ago, I discovered my husband's affair through our daughter's iPad mistake. It had felt like my world was ending. Now, getting ready for a date with a man who valued honesty and kindness, living in a home filled with peace and laughter, building a career that fulfilled me, I realized my world hadn't ended at all. It had just begun. Derek's betrayal had freed me from a marriage that was slowly suffocating me. His lies had forced me to find my own strength. His selfishness had taught me to value genuine love and respect. As I walked out the door to meet James for our first official date, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years: excitement about the future. Derek was serving his prison sentence, still dealing with the consequences of his choices. Natalie had disappeared into her new life in Ohio. And I was here, happy and free, with a beautiful daughter and unlimited possibilities ahead of me. Sometimes the best revenge isn't getting back at someone who hurt you. Sometimes the best revenge is building a life so wonderful that you forget they ever had the power to hurt you at all.